We were doing, yeah, let's start by doing a morning chant. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Om. So, welcome back. This is our final class, and I hope our studies of this final class goes well, and we move from death to immortality. All right, so we were on verse 23 in the previous class. And we were sort of given this, I guess, method or I guess understanding of what we need to do in order to be happy, which was, all we have to do is essentially the impulsive desires that we have and like the anger that arises because of those impulsive desires which don't get satisfied, only those we have to abandon. And if we can do that, happiness is available to us. And this is not like some sort of a philosophy or something like that, it's like an idealistic thing. We want to like take our own direct experience and see if this is true, right? So if I think at some point in the class, we talked about the pleasure principle, which is, what does it feel like when I'm happy, when I get what I want, right? So we all feel good when we get the things that we want. And what we need to start noticing is that when I'm, in that situation where I got what I wanted, start to pay attention to what the mind is like. And we will all have that experience where we will see that the mind in those moments where I'm enjoying what I got is not thinking about any other desires that I have. So because it's free from desire, I am feeling blissed out in those moments when I'm enjoying it. And then, after a while, that object that I've gained may become a little old, and then I start thinking about something else, and that's when I lose my happiness, happiness in quotes. So what this reveals to us is that we need desires to be unhappy. The mind by itself is pretty happy naturally. We have to do additional things to lose our peace. So this is actually quite a insight, because it gives us an understanding that all we have to do is let our mind sort of just be, instead of investing ourselves in like, I want this, I want that, and I must have it this way, and I must not have it that way. Those are the only two sort of reasons why we sort of don't have that sort of happiness available to us all the time, because it's covered. And that's the covering that we constantly talk about, the clouds that is covering. It's essentially these desires which are in our awareness and in our attention, and we want that desire to be successful, and our attention is fully on that and not realizing that that is the source and the cause of our lack of peace. So once we realize this, then what we have to do is remove only those impulses which are, I have to have it this way and I don't want to have it this other way. Those impulses, if we remove, then happiness is available, which is why this says that that person is a happy man. So we're going to sort of continue with like what happens once you're happy, that idea. But any thoughts about this? This is very important, because if we clearly understand the pleasure principle, then 90% of our work is done. Because we want to start to become familiar with when we are very happy, and start to become familiar when we are miserable and suffering. And we will see that in one situation, our mind is free from desire, like there are no desires. In the situation when we are suffering, we have a very strong insistence and an impulse of a desire, that I want something and I don't have it, and I'm suffering because of it. So that's it. Those are the two sort of pole ends of our experiences: free from desire and full of desire. And our sort of life is within these two realms. So let's do the next one if no one has any questions or thoughts. Would anyone like to read the English today?
I can do it.
All right. Thank you, Ramya. So 24. Yonta sukho antaratmas tathanta jyotirevayah sayogi brahmani varna brahmabhuto dhigacchati.
He who is happy within, who rejoices within, who is illuminated within, that yogi attains absolute freedom or moksha, himself becoming Brahman.
So in the previous verse, we said, what do we have to do to become happy? Or at least realize like what is happiness in the first place? Happiness is a mind free from desire. So once we realize that, the ability to have, the mind be free from desire becomes a possibility for that person. So, when I'm in this world and I'm suffering, like struggling to get something, my mind is like agitated and I want it this way. If we have the capacity to just drop that, immediately the mind becomes blissful. So like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where typical example is we are in traffic and, like we want to get somewhere and, there's a traffic jam and you're like, oh, this is so crazy. And you're like kind of like screaming at the steering wheel or just screaming at the traffic. But then when we let go of that sort of desire that I need to get to that place, or like you've accepted that the traffic is going to be there and you're going to be late. But the moment that acceptance happens and we let go of like that struggle, immediately it feels like a relief, right? Like something has just like been shed from us, and that weight has sort of dissolved. So that's what we're talking about, and that's one specific example. But in any example where our mind sort of grabs at something, and I'm like, I want this or I don't want this. But if we have the capability to just drop it, immediately this happiness is available. And then you can rejoice. So who rejoices within is sort of this understanding that all happiness and all enjoyments all come from within, which is, my experience of this entire world is something that I'm experiencing within. My mind is sort of has these impressions that I've gathered, and those paint this picture that I'm seeing, right? Like I see a beautiful sunset, I see a beautiful tree, but somebody else may not think of the tree as beautiful. They may think of something else as beautiful, right? So everybody sees things within their own framework of their minds. And that means that their experience is happening from within, right? So once we have that realization that even if I get what I want, the happiness that I experience also happens from within. It's only that because of my misunderstanding, I think that, oh, that thing is actually a thing that makes me happy, something external, but it's always from within. And once we have the capacity to let go of our sort of insistent desires, we can rejoice within at any time. And once we have this illumination, so this is what the illumination is, or the awakening, where we realize that there is some nature within us, this divine nature, which is illuminating this entire experience for us. And once we have realized that, then that yogi is essentially attains nirvana or moksha, or these words we use, or enlightenment. These are all sort of states that we reach, or the mind essentially reaches, which is the mind realizes that there is this happiness within. And that's sort of the, a moment when all of our practices and all of that culminate to this moment where I see clearly who I am. And once I see clearly who I am free, because I realize that the world and its experiences and all of that will continue to exist, and I can sort of engage in it and experience those joys and sorrows, or I can step back. And it doesn't mean that you're going to become some sort of a rock or some sort of like a single emotion person where only you will only experience one emotion. It's more about the emotions will not, I won't be, the emotions will be lingering. So, if I have an experience where I'm super happy or I'm super upset about something because something painful happened, it's going to be only in the moment. And once I'm done, I can just immediately drop it off, like, wearing a garment. I can just remove the garment and I'm said, okay, I'm done. So in a situation where, something terrible happens, like a tragedy happens to your friend, you're going to feel sad. And, in that moment. But then when you come back home, you have the capacity to, like, let go of that sadness. But that doesn't mean that there's no, empathy and those kinds of things. But you're sort of realizing that the emotions and the thoughts and feelings, they are all sort of uh, coming and going, coming and going. And there's no sort of identity to any of it. And we're just experiencing whatever comes to us and whatever goes. And that's basically what happens to that person. And then when you say himself becoming Brahman, that's basically realizing that I am the self. And even though I have a body, even though I have the mind, even though I have, emotions and thoughts and feelings, all of those are experiences that I definitely experience, but that's not really who I am. They are certainly a part of me, but that's not who I am. I am the source that illumines it all. And once we realize that, we are free from what is being perceived. Because right now, my experience is that when I'm, illumining sadness, like I am somehow sad, and not realizing that the sadness is being illumined and it's not me. It's like I'm watching a movie in a way. That's the analogy, that the movie is presenting sadness, but that doesn't mean that I am sad. There's this sort of, I can step back and look at the sadness, maybe engage with it, play with it. And the same thing with, positive emotions too. I can be extremely blissful, and bliss is being illumined too. So you start to sort of experience the world in a more clear way, which is, you see things for what they are. Any thoughts about this?
Uh, I don't know. My question may be taking us a little, you know, back to the entire discussion. But sometimes I feel if I'm always happy and free of desire, uh, will I become lazy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is a practice. So we only have to practice something until we realize the end. Because once we get here, we realize that nothing really is an impediment. All my impediments were imaginations. So, the practice we are given is, we want to look at our insistent desires and see that they are the barriers and obstacles in my seeing clearly. But once, if I see clearly, then those barriers no longer are barriers, right? So, like, for example, if I thought getting that raise is the only goal of my life, and if I don't get it, I will be unhappy. Like, that is my initial understanding. And now, through this work, I have sort of seen who I am, and I realized that, oh, I am this divinity. I was never this this person who is, let's say, this identity that you're a smart person and you work very hard. You have this identity, and I was never that in the first place. I had an wrong understanding that I was this personality. Now this personality ego has been destroyed. Now you may say, okay, I want that raise because I need this X amount of money to be able to do this project. So I need that raise. And you can strive for it. But now the way you approach the situation and the desire is going to be very different, because you get it or you don't get it. It's not going to bother you because you realized where the happiness is. And you're going to start to do things out of creativity and out of love for the work, rather than, like, a future desire, or sort of future outcome, which is, I'm going to be happy when this happens. Because you realize that happiness is not in any future outcomes. It's right here, right now. And we all have a body and we all have a mind. So what are you going to do with it? Right? If you have certain talents and um, if you have certain skills, you're going to use them to some degree, right? Because you're young and you have energy and you have a life in front of you. So what are you going to do? So then you're going to look at it from more like a practical point of view, which is like, I have these skills. What is the problems I can solve? And not from like, oh, what am I going to get by solving these problems? Because this whole sense of existential crisis, and that's the only thing we get from this work. We don't get anything material. We get a sense of existential freedom, which is nothing that I do or don't do is going to um, destroy me, because that's mostly our fears, right? Which is, am I going to be okay if if I lose what I have? Am I going to be okay? Or if I get what if I don't get what what I really want, am I going to be okay? Those are the two existential fears. And because of this knowledge, not from an intellectual knowledge, experiential knowledge, those two fears get destroyed. And if those two fears get destroyed, then there's nothing to fear in this world. What else is there to fear? And then laziness is what? Laziness just means lack of inspiration. That's basically laziness. And you're not inspired because you're believing in some story. So we talk about tamas, rajas, and sattva. Mostly laziness is from the tamasic state of mind, where you're extremely deluded, where you feel that you are like not good enough or whatever. Like that's usually where the syndrome of laziness is. If we are extremely inspired people, we will put in the effort where we have, whatever we are inspired towards, right? Think about your own experience where you feel inspired to do something. You don't even remember what time things are, right? Like you just continue to keep working for like hours and hours without realizing that it's late in the night, because that's what inspiration does. And once we are in touch with this divine nature, we are inspired all the time. There's no question of like laziness. Does that answer your question?
Wonderfully answered, Puneet. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Puneet, I have a question.
Yes.
When someone reaches this state, is there
Mhm.
a risk of them not fully engaging with the world? In that, what if a yogi starts treating every experience like a movie? Because while everything could be like a movie, what if they treat, sadness or happiness with some degree of apathy, saying that it doesn't matter?
So that is also, yes, that is a practice. But once we start to integrate it into our lives, we have to drop that practice. So saying that things are a movie is a stepping stone to reaching this final goal. Because once we're reaching this final goal, it's not like the world sort of disappears for us. It reappears, and we see that this whole world is me. So how would you treat yourself if you're suffering, or like if you have a problem, if you have your own problem, or you're like if your sense of identity has a problem, so your family may have some problem, you always give it full attention, right? You're like, oh, my husband or my partner has a problem, I will listen to them, I will try to help them in the best way. And why do we do that? Because our identity is, we think that they are part of my identity, right? And family and close friends, all of them are part of our identity. So we sort of give them full attention
Yeah.
and whatever we do, right? Without even thinking once or twice. So if our identity starts to expand, the same level of concern and attention we give to our close friends and family, we will start to give other people too, without even thinking twice. So the sense of apathy and stuff is only useful in the beginning, because it's a practice that we try to use to make us see that our involvement in silly things like our own limited desires and egos and selfishness that we have, we want to get away from that. And that the looking at our own desires as like as a movie, that's helpful. And it's only a practice. It's not that you have to continue to look at that the whole life. It's a process, and at some point we abandon even that practice. And in the end, then after that, there's no practice. There's no thing of looking at it as a movie or not a movie, because nothing in the end can really bother you. That's a realization that we have. And because we know for a fact that nothing can bother us anymore, then there's nothing to fear. And then everything becomes an opportunity to engage. So in a situation where you have something, somebody asking you for help, if you have the means and the skills to do it, you will do it. If you don't have this have the skills, you'll be like, sorry, I cannot help you because I don't know how to do it. So you start to look at life from a very like practical standpoint, which is like, can I participate, or is it not worth participating because I'm not going to provide any value here? So the sense of apathy and stuff is not, usually does not happen. If you see somebody doing that, then they haven't completely understood what this is all about. This is about being free here and now, and it doesn't mean you have to go into a cave and that's where freedom is going to be. It is in the world, and it's in the most ordinary states as well. It's not like we're going to become, like a king or like, or a queen, or like become like super powerful. Like it could be as ordinary as like, taking care of like a loved one. It could be like, as ordinary as like watching a movie, like simple situations like that. And we can be fully involved in those situations. So it's more about involvement rather than like apathy. I think there's a practice of like trying to step away from the insistence of certain things, but that's a practice, and we move beyond that practice after we are sort of stable and able to deal with our own minds. Does that help?
Got it. Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Any other thoughts? All right, let us do 25. Labante brahmani varna mrishraya shina kalpashaha छिन्नद्रे धा yatatmanah sarvabhuta hiterataha.
Those rishis obtain absolute freedom or moksha, whose sins have been destroyed, whose dualities are torn asunder, who are self controlled and intent on the welfare of all beings.
So in the previous verse, we sort of like talked about what that freedom is, like, or rather, once we have this inner peace and inner joy, and we have the ability to go there, that is freedom, because then the world no longer bothers us. And now, because the world no longer bothers us, what would we do? We would essentially, go for the welfare of all beings, because that's the natural thing to do, because you realize that everyone else is also like us, and we had the same issues that everyone else had, and or rather everyone has the same issues that we had, and now we can sort of help them and with whatever is needed. And sins here being destroyed doesn't mean like they've like it's not like a sin here is, like it's not the typical thing of like a moral thing. Sin essentially just means those insistent desires and those selfish desires that we all have, where I only want to, where I have an idea that if I get what I want, I will be happy. That's essentially a selfish desire. And that's the sin that we're talking about. And those are all given up in a way. And it's not suppressed. It's just that we have realized that that is not true, that all these desires are not going to give me happiness. So we cannot get to this place by any sort of force. So, we can't like will our way into like this state. It's more about having this insight that, oh, it's not true. All that I thought was true is not true. Kind of like, if you have I would say no real desire to want to ride a tricycle today, right? You may have had a very strong desire when you were 5 that I want to ride a tricycle, but that desire has now, finished, it's exhausted itself, and now you have other desires. So similarly, all the desires that we have right now, if we have, some realization, they will also get exhausted. And from that standpoint, you will look and be like, oh, I had these desires, but I just don't have anymore, because I know for a fact they are not really something that I care for. Just like the same way you don't care for a tricycle. So once that happens, who sinned, and that's what it means for sins to have been destroyed, because those are the only things that were getting in the way. Those were the obstacles for me from not really seeing who I am. Those insistence on I want it this way and I don't want it this way, and dualities are torn asunder. It's like, dualities are essentially what we see in the world, right? There is hot and cold, there is good and bad, there's happiness and sadness. There are these extremities, and once we realize that those are just stuff which is in the physical, I am beyond the physical. So because I realize that I'm beyond the physical, the dualities no longer affect me. And that's what it means, that the dualities are torn asunder. And who are self-control and intent is essentially, they don't even, I wouldn't even say they're self-control. It's more like they don't need to control themselves anymore, because there's no sense of ego or selfishness in these kinds of people. And that's something that we can strive to do when we are not there yet. But this is describing, how they are, that they are just essentially okay with whatever comes and whatever does not come. And once they're in this state where now they're capable human beings, because now they can participate in the world and go through like the entire crazinesses of like other people, and like things can work out for them or they cannot work out for them, but they have the mental fortitude to go through with it extremely gracefully, because they know for a fact that whatever they're doing and whatever outcome that happens does not touch them. Whereas for us, we start out doing things because we want the outcome, and we strive to do it. And the moment the path starts going away from what we originally planned, there is a lot of suffering, because we think that we are somehow not going to be okay. But if that understanding is that, okay, no matter what happens, I'm going to be fine, then everything is cool, right? Like you're just sort of flowing around with the river of life. So this kind of answers Ramya's question of like, no, we are not going to be, have any sense of apathy here. We're going to care for people because they are us. You would be filled with love. Like if you're filled with love, there's no question of apathy. Apathy and laziness and all these things are only from a lack of being full. So you're from a place of emptiness. If you're a place of fullness, then those things don't even arise. Any thought on this one? All right, let's do the next one. Kama krodha viyuktanam yatinam yat chetasam avito brahman varnam vartate viti atmanam.
Absolute freedom or Brahmika bliss exists on all sides for those self-controlled ascetics who are free from desires and anger, who have controlled their thoughts, and who have realized the self.
So we're talking about the processes that they have gone through to get to absolute freedom. And something can be absolute only if it is true at all times, right? That's what absolute means. Like at no time it is not true. The moment it can be sort of negated, it's not absolute. So for example, this waking world can be negated for your own experience, which is when you go into a dream world. When you're dreaming, this world is not available to you. And when you're in this world, the dream world is not available to you. So from a philosophical standpoint, you can negate the waking state because there is a dream state. And you can negate the dream state because there's a waking state. But something which is absolute cannot be negated. So the self can never be negated, because in the waking state, the self is revealing the waking state. In the dream state, the self is revealing the dream state. So the self always has to be there, because that's the sense of awareness that we are, that is illuminating stuff for us. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to realize that awareness. which is always there. There's no off switch for that, which is why it is kind of hard to realize, because usually our method of learning something is by comparing and contrasting it with something else, right? Like, I know that this is a phone, and if I don't see this, then there is no phone, right? So when I see this again in the future, I'll be like, that is a phone, because I have seen that when it's not there, that the phone is missing. And then when the phone is there, that is what the phone looks like. But for the self, there's no off switch. You cannot say I'm not me, right? You're always you. It's like on that experience of always being on, there's all this other stuff in there. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove our attention from all of this other stuff, so we can clearly have a perception of the self. And so the person who has sort of controlled their thoughts, so that's what we talk about, who have controlled their thoughts, because that is the initial process that we go through. And I don't like the word control so much, because it sounds like you're trying to suppress or do something, but it's more about like focusing on something else. Like we have talked about before, if our attention is on something else, so if our attention is not on all of my past sadness that I have, if it's on something else, then automatically the effect and the energy of the sadness starts to dismantle and starts to break. And that's what happens. So we are trying to put our attention on something else. So that's why karma yoga is prescribed. So you do single pointed attention on something that is in front of you. If you're feeling really angry and you have a lot of energy, you go and clean the kitchen, or like you go for a walk or go for a run. So what you're doing is like you're using that energy for something constructive. And because that happens, the mind is starting to like readjust itself, where it's not always lingering on something in the past or thinking about something in the future. It becomes more in the now, in the now, in the now. Once we do that, we start to get a little bit more control of our mind. And once we get a little bit more control of our mind, a little bit more awareness of our mind, we can start to see what kinds of insistent desires that we have. What kinds of like, how angry do we keep getting? And then we start to get familiar with that feeling. We can start to like let go of it, because we start to see that when I'm happy, my mind is peaceful and it has no desires. When I'm suffering, my mind is full of desires. So the desire is the only reason why I'm suffering. My rather insistent desires, like wanting to go for a walk does not make you unhappy when it doesn't happen, right? But like something like, I want my boss to think I'm doing a good job, is a very insistent desire. And if they don't think that, sometimes we may suffer. So we have to be very careful in understanding what are insistent desires and what are not. Because desire by itself is not a problem. It's only the insistent desires which are problematic. So once we realize that, and once we can distinguish between the two, we want to let go of the insistent desires, because we know that doesn't really make me happy. I thought getting a raise will make me happy, but it does. It makes me, may give me some sort of joy for some time, but it doesn't truly satisfy. Now I want a bigger raise or more money or something else. So once we have that realization, we can be free from those kinds of desires. And because we are free from those kinds of desires, even anger starts to get removed from our life. Because anger only arises from those insistent desires. Because anger is a consequence of not getting what we want. Again, because we now are free from those insistent desires, the bliss of our own self nature is available all the time. Because the self is always on, like I said, it's in the waking state, it's in our dream state, and it's in our deep sleep state. Those are the only three experiences for us while we have this body. So in all those three experiences, if the self is available, and if we know for a fact that the self's, Brahmika bliss, which is the bliss of the self, is available, we can experience that in all the three states, which is our entire life. So that's what is the implication of this, which is we have the capacity to revel in that self, in the bliss at all times. Any thoughts about this?
I have a question, but hopefully it doesn't take us back again too much. Um, how do we rationalize this with the, I think, more Western understanding that when you feel something, you should feel that emotion fully and give it attention instead of moving your attention to something else? So, you know how a lot of people tell you, like, if you're angry or you're feeling sad, like, give space to those feelings instead of just going and cleaning the house or whatever it is, because that's something I used to do all the time. When I felt like things were out of control or when I felt irritated, I would start cleaning. And now from what you're saying, it seems like that I was actually doing the right thing all along. So how do I kind of reconcile the two ideas?
So it's about being conscious. So when you're doing something like watching television, for example, right? Like I wouldn't, like, you're still doing something when you're watching TV, but you're going unconscious because you're distracting yourself and not putting attention to the now, right? You're basically going into some dream world, which is like in the world of the television show or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's not useful. But like doing work is in the now, because the body and the feeling and the sensation and the pain, all of it is actually in the body and the mental structure, right? And if our attention is in the now, we are essentially dealing with the body in a way as well. So I wouldn't say that you're kind of like getting away from that situation, but if we have not spent enough time to sort of get familiar with like what does anger feel like, or what does sadness feel like, being able to recognize those emotions, then I would say it's useful to kind of like spend some time like completely feeling that emotion and completely staying with that. Because that is useful. We want to also become like familiar with what does it feel to be angry, what does it feel to be sad, what is it, and we can only know that and identify that when we have spent enough time just being with that emotion. So good call out. So that's sort of a prerequisite, I would say. Like you have spent, like, what anger is and what sadness is, right? Like, but you may have met many people who have absolutely no clue that they're even angry, right? They're just like, oh, I'm just but you as an individual, you should be able to recognize that, oh, I am extremely angry right now because of, let's say, I had this desire and this person acted in something which was opposed my desire from coming true, and now there is anger in me. So now you are conscious that, oh, this is anger right now. Now the question is, what do I do with this anger? Do I throw it at this person who made me angry? Or I can say, okay, that's not going to be useful. I'm going to do something with this energy. Because in the end, anger is nothing but like excessive energy that you have. And usually what we tend to do is we just throw this energy on somebody else unconsciously, because we don't realize we are angry in the first place. So this is actually like, requires a lot of like effort, in the sense like you have to be very conscious that, oh, anger is coming in, and there's this urge to want to throw this energy at something, and we want to sort of recognize that, because that recognition itself takes a while, and then once we recognize it, we want to like be a little bit more constructive, and it's very consciously saying, oh, I'm going to use this anger energy to clean this room, and then you can look at the room and be like, wow, thank you, anger, for like this clean room now, rather than like not acknowledging that anger is there, not acknowledging that what made you angry. You have to be extremely clear about all those things. We want to be, why we got angry, what was the cause, and now I'm going to use this thing to, whatever work I have to do. So there's a slight difference in how we want to, it's not just getting away from it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Any other thoughts? All right. We are on 27. Sparshan kritva brahman chakshush vaitantare bhuvaho pranapanau samau kritva nasabhyantara charinau.
Shutting out all external contacts and fixing the gaze as though between the eyebrows, equalizing the outgoing and incoming breath moving within the nostrils.
So this is I think like two verses go together. So let's do the next one because this does not end. Yatendriyam mano buddhir mano moksha parayanaha vigatecha bhaya krodho ya sada mukta eva saha.
With senses, mind, and intellect ever controlled, having liberation as his supreme goal, free from desire, fear, and anger, the sage is verily liberated forever.
So here we're given the practice of meditation. How do we meditate and what are we doing while we're meditating? And so essentially when we are meditating, we are, um, we are trying to get an experiential taste of our real nature. Like that is the entire purpose of meditation, which is I'm trying to get familiar with who I really am and what is this awareness and the self that everyone keeps talking about. Like, is it just an idea or a theoretical philosophical concept? And this is saying that no, can be directly experienced. It's here, right now, and we use paradoxical languages like it is further than the furthest and nearer than the nearest, right? If it is that far away and it is right here, like what does that mean? So like all these weird languages, because it's very hard to explain something that is not an object, right? Like we can describe something, like I can look at like a cup and say it is this shape, feels this way, it has this texture and this temperature. All of these qualities I can describe because it's an external thing. But something that is not external is indescribable, right? There's no words you can use to describe something that is not an experience, like not an external thing. It is like the subject itself, um, and that can only be experienced by our own effort or whatever, by the own practice. We can try to describe it in language, but it's never going to be enough. It's trying to describe love, for example. Like, what does it mean? Like, you can write poetry, but unless you experience it ourselves, like there's no way to know what it is. Same thing with like maybe an orgasm too, right? You can write all about it, but unless you experience it, there's no way to know. But those also fall short because they are also experiences in a way. So you can describe them, but the self is the subject. So you cannot describe it because there's no off switch, like I mentioned. It's always on. So it's available all the time. The problem is there's too much other stuff also in my experience that does not give me a clear perception of it. So meditation is sort of a way for us to get closer to it, because it removes or reduces the amount of other stuff that's in my awareness. So what is meditation? We are shutting out all external contacts, which is I'm sitting in a room, maybe the lights are off, so it's dark. Maybe it's like quiet too, because we don't want sound while we're meditating. So it's like you're shutting out like eyes, like input from eyes, we're shutting down input from ears, shutting down input from nose. We're not touching anybody, so in no sensation of touch. That was the last one. Taste. We're not eating anything. So like all of our senses are essentially, at least the physical senses, have been shut. So there's no sensory input coming in. But now the problem is the mind starts to get active, right? We may physically not be engaged with anything, but the mind starts to engage. So we now have mental smells, we have mental images, we have mental tastes, right? All of those things which we start to dream about when we are meditating. So because those things start to happen, the practice is how do we get the mind in control, right? So now we've gotten the physical body in control because now we're in a quiet place. How do we get the mind in control? So the mind is essentially fixing the gaze as though between the eyebrows. So it's not a literal thing where I'm focusing at this point or anything, but it's almost like you're single pointedly like looking through one place. And because it's single pointed attention, you're trying to kind of like pin the mind. You're just trying to hold the mind in steady. And that kind of like, breathing, having a long conscious breath also helps, because what's happening is the mind is being moved in a direction that moves you into the now. Because the mind is nothing but like trying to think about something from the past, or like think about what it wants to do in the future. That's the mind. So instead we want to like bring it into the now. And the body is always in the now. So like, focusing the mind on a breath is good. Or like focusing at some point in the mind is good. So these are all good tools that we can use to bring the mind into the now. And once we do that, what's happening is, the senses are controlled, because we are sitting in a quiet place. Your mind is trying to get controlled, and your intellect is also controlled. So your intellect is essentially that part of the mind which essentially judges and says this is good and this is not good. This sort of analyzing and analytical aspect of our mind, which is constantly active in the world, right? Whenever we're walking, we're like, oh, this thing is like I have to avoid this and I have to go here. I have like, is this a good decision? Is that not a good decision? That's the sort of role of the intellect. And in meditation, we want to stop that process of judging, where we are evaluating and stuff. So and because our mind is like focused on a single thing, that sort of judging aspect also kind of goes away. We just want to watch whatever is happening. So maybe a thought is coming by, we watch it, and it just flows by, without sort of saying, oh, what is this thought? Why did it happen? That's the intellect wanting to engage. So we want to sort of put a pin on the intellect as well. And having liberation as the supreme goal, because we want to have a desire for something, unless we know what we are doing, or unless we know what the outcome is, like it's just useless exercise, right? Like if you're sitting in a boat, you want to know where to go. Otherwise, you just don't know where you're going. You can just keep rowing your boat, never getting to wherever you need to go. So liberation is the goal, not getting better fame in life, not having more money, not having more like relationships. All of those things may happen, because what's going to happen is you may become a little bit more good at the things that you do. That's a consequence, because your energy and your effort is now going to be more single pointed in the endeavors of your life. And because that's true, you're just probably going to become a much more efficient person. But that is like not the final goal. And a lot of people get lost in that world, because their life starts to becoming a lot better, but they're still not happy people, or they're still not peaceful people, because they have not really understood what is yoga about. Yoga is about just like making my life better. But that's not the real goal of yoga. That may happen, but that's not the real goal, because the real goal is to be fully liberated. And this, while we are meditating, all these sort of desires and our past fears and all of those things may come up, because what we're doing is we are staying conscious. And because we're staying conscious, all the energy and emotions which we have sort of locked in our body starts to come up. It starts to get dislodged. And because they start to get dislodged, we have to deal with it. So there's a lot of sort of strength, inner strength, that we need to be able to like look at all of it, cry if we have to, or feel angry if we have to, but we just have to stay with it in the meditation, which is why, like what Ramya was talking about earlier, meditation is that process of staying with that feeling. And if once we realize that we can stay with any feeling, because a feeling never really destroys us, right? Like feeling never like really harms you. It's just that what we do with that feeling is always a problem, how we engage with that feeling. So just staying with the feeling, a feeling has an end. So a feeling comes, stays for maybe, let's say it stays for an hour. But after the hour, if we are absolutely present and okay with the feeling, it eventually dissolves. And what's happened is the mind has gotten an insight that, oh, this feeling is not as bad as I thought it was. And because of that, you know, that experience of like, oh, this feeling eventually came and I was able to deal with it, and now it's not there. There's this faith that, oh, I can deal with more stuff. And then what starts to happen is like the entire process of life starts to become about trying to get rid of these feelings. Like if fear arises, instead of running away from fear, we start to jump towards fear. So like everything that we do in life, if there is a little sense of fear in me that gets generated, I'm like, okay, I want to see what this is about, and I want to get over it. Because realizing that freedom lies when we go into something, not when we run away from something. So the entire process of life becomes yoga, which is, how do I get rid of all of the fears that I have? How do I get rid of all of the, the unprocessed feelings that I have? And because our life starts to become about that and not about wanting more stuff and, getting famous and rich and all of that, we get liberated. The sage gets liberated, because liberation is being free from all of those things. And that's the shift in understanding that happens. And then our life gets transformed. And so that's the process of meditation, which is why meditation is fairly important after a certain point in time. So in the beginning, we may not have the capacity to meditate. We may want to like do single pointed attention, and we're building our ability to concentrate. So that is also pretty good. We want to like be able to concentrate and do things from a single pointed attention. And once we realize that the mind is, fairly a little bit more stable and strong, 6 months ago, we may not have been able to meditate, but because of this single pointed attention that we've been doing, we may try to be like, okay, let me see what it's like to meditate today. And you may see that, oh, it's actually not that hard. I thought that, all these thoughts overwhelm me, but because of this single pointed attention, I can now focus on things and not let these thoughts take over. So we start to sort of progress in this evolution of the path. So we go from single pointed attention and we sort of start to move towards meditation, because in meditation we have these we may have these moments of experiences where the mind is absolutely free of desire and thoughts. And in those moments, our real nature shines, because we have a clear perception of what is our nature. And that nature we see is like, oh, that is the bliss that I was looking for. And it's right here. Like I didn't have to do anything. In fact, I just had to like allow my mind to like not invest in all these stupid physical, what the world has to offer, all these desires and things that I keep thinking about. I had to just get rid of that. And once those things are gone, the real nature of who I am is just revealed, because that is what is left. If everything in the world is removed, that is what remains. And that is what remains all the time, because that is who you are. And that is the self, which is shining and illuminating this world. And if we have a taste of that, that stays with us. And because that stays with us, it stays with us in every experience. And we realize that you can go back to that place at any time. And it's not about wanting to go back and avoiding. It's more about like the world now becomes painted with that bliss and with that peace. So it's more beautiful and more enjoyable, rather than the opposite. You see the beauty in everything, because there is this same connection and the same material that this entire world has been created. So like, the same self that you have is the same self this other person has, the same self an animal has, same self the plant has. So all life becomes, you become connected to all life. And that is the final sort of result. And that transforms our life. Any thoughts and questions about this? So that's the practice of meditation. And I hope, we get to a place where we can at least meditate for 15 minutes a day. That's a good place. Or like 20 minutes is great. If you can do 40, that's even better. but we want to start to get there, where we are, getting away from this world and going into this clean state, and experiencing that our own self. Right, I think this is the last one. Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvalokam maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shanti mrichati.
Knowing me as enjoyer of sacrifices and austerities, the great Lord of all worlds, the friend of all beings, he attains peace.
So, the Gita was sort of written in 3 levels. Like I may have mentioned this before. So, it's written as a do's and don'ts of like how to live a good life from a very sort of like general level for like somebody who has no idea that self-realization is equality. The second aspect is written as a seeker. So you can read the Gita identifying with Arjuna, who is the seeker, who's like, I don't know what the self is, tell me what it is. And the third aspect is once you've realized the self, you can read it as Krishna. So whenever Krishna says, knowing me, he's basically referring to the self in you. So here he's saying, knowing me as the enjoyer. So he's talking about the self. So knowing the self as the enjoyer of sacrifices and austerities, which basically means that whenever something comes true, when the desire that we have, when we get it, and when we feel like we're enjoying the desire, what's happening is the self, the mind is just coming to the self. Because for a moment, the mind is free from desire. And remember when we said in meditation, when mind is free of thoughts and insistence and all these things, the self is naturally revealed to them. So every time we are actually enjoying something, we are actually enjoying the self. So the mind is coming home. So the self is actually enjoying, or rather the mind is enjoying the self. So that's happening all the time. And so once we have this realization that you are the self and it's available all the time, you can technically enjoy that in any situation, because all it takes is an instant to go back there, because you are that. And it says the great Lord of all the worlds, which is saying that, oh, the self is everywhere. There's no place where the self is not. And this may, so that's the sort of paradoxical language of it's further than the furthest and nearer than the nearest, which is it's eminent, which is why some religions and stuff, they talk about how God is omnipresent and omniscient and all pervading. These are sort of the language that we hear in different places, which means what? Which means there's no place where it is not. And where, so if you look at our own experience, if you look at, when is it that you are not you? Like you are always you. You wake up, you're sitting in bed. You go to sleep, you enter into a dream world. So there's always this sense of me shining. I'm revealing this waking world when I'm awake. I'm revealing this dream world when I'm asleep. And sometimes when I'm in deep sleep, I don't reveal anything. It's just blank. So it's always me is there. Like that is the first point of our experience, the I. And then after the I, it shines on the body. Then you say, I am this body. And then it shines on something else. Like I am this body in this room, right? So the I is the precursor to everything. And so essentially the I is the self, right? So that is there all the time. And it's all pervading. So, so we talk about God and all of that stuff, but in the end, that's nothing but self. So you are God. And then you can say something like, there's no thing other than God, or there's nothing other than God in this world. There's this, I don't know if it's a Christian thing or like a Jewish thing, but like there's this person who said, I went looking for God, but then I found myself. Or the other way, which is I went looking for myself and I found God. Both of them are true. because they are one and the same thing. The self is the Lord, and the Lord is the friend, is the self. And then, you know, you may look at that and be like, oh, you know, it's the Lord or something greater than I am. But then we're given this other idea, which is it's the friend of all beings, which means that, you know, friends seem a lot more approachable than somebody who's the great Lord, right? Like you may feel a little scared or whatever to approach this person. But if it's a friend, you're like, oh, I can talk to my friend. It's fairly easy to come in contact with a friend, which means that very accessible. It's not something far away. It's right here, right now. And once we attain that, or once we know that, and once we experience it, peace is a consequence. And not just like peace like we get when we go on a vacation. Eternal peace. Because it is the peace that you obtain because of your own self nature, which is always there. No point when we are not you. You are always you. No matter where you go, you are you. And if the peace is in you, then the peace is everywhere, available all the time. So that's the idea. And I hope that is a possibility for all of us, because this is not a philosophy or a philosophical thought. This is like directly accessible and available to all of us. And you know, the 95% of the world doesn't know that this is a possibility. We all are striving for material things, which is totally fine. That's where we are. But now that we have had some sort of awareness about this and a taste about it, and this idea that this is possible, I hope all of us can strive to get here, because what else is there to do? If we look at our own lives and see you know, all of us striving, all of our effort, has it really given us what we want? And does it work? That, you know, all the ideas that we have gathered, like, does it work on a level of being peaceful and blissful and happy and ecstatic? If you look at the time when we were kids, when we were 5 or 7, how blissful we were, and we look at it now, shouldn't we be more blissful because of all of the experiences and knowledge and the things that we've gathered? But most of us are not, right? If you look at a 5-year-old kid and you look at somebody who's an adult, you're like, what happened? Right? You should only progress upwards on the level of bliss and ecstasy. But we are sort of going downwards only because we don't realize that the bliss is right here. The kid realizes that, but the kid doesn't have the knowledge to explain it in this way. They're just blissful, right? Because they don't have any worries. But we have somehow created a sense of worry and like ideas we have absorbed, thinking that this is how it should be and this is not how it should be. And that's the only burden that we carry. So I think this is the last verse. Any thoughts about this? And I think this is the ending verse of the chapter. So Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Juna Samvade Karma Sanna Yasa Yogo Nama Panchamodhyaya.
Thus, in the Upanishad of the glorious Bhagavad Gita, in the science of the eternal, in the scripture of yoga, in the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, the fifth discourse ends entitled Yoga of True Renunciation of Action.
Cool. So like all, I guess that in this tradition, like there is no end of this work. So that the tradition is to go back to the first verse that we did, and we read the first verse again, because essentially what that's doing is saying, all right, we finished our formal study, but now when we go back, we're going to like do our own internal study. So we start again, because all these ideas are something that we need to sort of keep simmering our mind with, and like, marinating our mind with, because the world is going to present opposite ideas. And when we forget, because the world seems very real, and we get involved and sort of re-identified with all of the stuff. So which is why we want to do this continuously. And then there's an end. There is an end when we reach the final goal. But until then, we want to keep sort of engaging with this. So let's do the first one again. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Loke Asmin Vidha Nishtha Pura Prokta Mayanagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyayam Karma Yogena Yoginam.
The blessed Lord said, "In this world there is a twofold path. As said before, O sinless one, the path of knowledge of the Sankhyans and the path of action of the Yogins."
Cool. So hopefully this verse makes a little sense. But that's it. That was the end of the course. And thank you for this beautiful journey that we all, at least I had a lot of fun. And thank you all for participating. Any thoughts or questions about, the stuff we've done so far? Anything across any class or anything outside as well?
I have a question, Puneet. Can you remind us why it says renunciation of action as the ending?
Are you looking at the first verse or the end one?
The last one, yeah.
Okay, so this is essentially renunciation of the agency. So remember we said that there's yoga of action and yoga of knowledge. So in yoga of knowledge, what you're doing is like you're doing all the work, but you're not identifying yourself with the person or the ego that does the work, because there is, the what ends up happening is like the person who does the work has to suffer the consequences of the work. And by suffer, I mean when they do well, people give them praise, and when they do poorly, people yell at them, right? And that usually results in us either building up our ego to say, oh wow, I'm such a cool and powerful person and I'm so successful, or the other way, which is like I'm a miserable person and I suck. Both of those are barriers to spiritual progress, because that's keeping our mind at the level of our personality, or at the level of our ego. So yoga for renunciation of action is prescribed for those people who are able to realize that the mind is not me, and sort of continue to do the actions and not identify with any idea that is built regarding this ego. So if somebody says, oh, you look so beautiful today, that is essentially commenting on this body and this mind, I guess, right? And you're able to distance yourself from it. You may still be like, oh, thank you so much. I put in a lot of effort or whatever. But inside, you know for a fact that you are not this mind and body. But that is much harder to do if we haven't done enough work to be able to get to that place where I know for a fact that this mind and body is an accumulation. I'm not this. But for most people, yoga of action is prescribed, where you do all of the work, but you do it with single-pointed attention. And that also leads to the same place and moves us in the same direction, which is I'm not focused on the outcome. I'm focused only on the work. And let's say the outcome doesn't work out and you suffer a little bit. So you are suffering only 5% of the time, but at least 95% of the time when we are doing the work, we are focused on the work. So that's the distinction. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Cool. Any other thoughts? Okay.
It's been a fantastic journey, Puneet.
Oh yeah.
So been wonderful. I missed the first class, but and honestly, when I attended the second class, I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I should be doing this. And then I started off this like, okay, I get 1 hour of Sunday to myself when I don't have to think about anything else. And that's how I started doing this. But I thoroughly enjoyed, and I look forward for these Sunday sessions.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, Govind, and your thoughts and your energy and yeah, just you being here has really made the class amazing. So thank you.
Likewise,
Thank you.
Puneet, these classes are just amazing, and I rarely use superlatives like this, but really has started me on a journey to changing how I view things, which is very rare. And so in that sense, it is life changing, and that has changed. It has started to change my mindset. And I feel, I think I will find Sundays empty without class. But thank you so much. It's really been fantastic.
Oh, thank you. And I think at some point we can. I don't know if I'm going to do another one maybe this year, but maybe next year, if folks are up for it, can do another one. So
Absolutely.
do you folks want to do a meditation? I know we have 15 minutes left.
Sure. Happy to do it.
Okay. Cool. Let me stop sharing. Okay. So everyone, I hope you can sit up straight if you're lying down. And let's start by just taking a few deep breaths. Just settling into the body. And acknowledging that we have this body and you're breathing all the time. And we can consciously choose to pay attention to the breath. And doing that brings us to the now. Our mind is no longer thinking about our desires or planning for the future. So keep taking longer breaths. So you want to get into a position of just being a witness to all that's coming up. So it could be sensations in our body, could be emotions that we're feeling, could be thoughts. All of those are perceived by this witness. Or I would say it's perceived by some awareness that we have. And they come up, they exist for a while, and then they go back from where they came. So it's like we're watching this river flowing in front of us. There's all kinds of things in the river, and we don't want to engage with it so much. We just want to notice that it's there, and then they just flow by, and then something else comes up. So we have this capacity to focus on different things, different objects. So we can focus on a thought that's there, or then we can bring our focus back to the breath. We can focus on a sensation on our leg. Our mind can sort of move this attention. So we don't have to keep our attention at one place. If we don't want to, we can move it. So we want to pay attention to our breath, the breathing of the incoming breath and the outgoing breath. And try to pay attention to the gap between these two breaths. When one incoming breath pauses and then the outgoing breath happens, there is this gap. And in that gap, there is no breath. And then after the gap ends, the breath is noticed again. You want to try to keep our attention on these gaps. If your mind starts to think about something, bring your attention back to the breaths and start to notice the gaps again. And in the gaps, see if you can get a sense of your awareness being like a open sky or just this vast feeling of emptiness in this gap. It may just be for a split second, and then some other sensation or feeling may come over it. But for some moments, see if you can get a sense of a vast space of awareness. And this is the context or the awareness or the self that we talk about. In this self, all of it exists. Our sensations, our emotions, our thoughts, they are all revealed in this space of consciousness or space of awareness. Take your time, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So let's do our ending chant. If you want to join, you can join, or you can just listen as well. Yogarato va, Yogarato va, Yogarato va, Yogarato va, Sangarato va, Sangavihina, Sangarato va, Sangavihina, Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chitta, Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chitta, Nandati 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 Va, Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva, Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva. So this is the purpose of yoga, not to do physical contortions and stuff. It's to realize the self. And we do that because once the mind can go there, only they can truly enjoy this world, because they're free from existential crisis. So I hope this is a possibility for all of us. And this is not theoretical, this is absolutely attainable. And most people don't attain it not because it's difficult, but because they just don't know, or they just don't realize that it's accessible and available. So we are very lucky if you think about it. We are, young, and we have this knowledge that this is available and this is a possibility. So let's all strive and transform our lives, and so that we can live it more fully and more joyfully. And this world is going to have its fair share of problems and all of that, and this gives us the tools to essentially deal with anything that comes up, and live through it with joy rather than fear. So thank you all for participating. It's been great, and I had a blast doing this. I hope you did too, or at least you learned some tools that you can use. And I'm always available to chat, and if you want to reach out and have a conversation and stuff, and I'm available for that. There just won't be a Sunday sort of class until I think I would say Jan, because of the holidays and all of that. So it's going to be difficult to coordinate, and I think I get like a few weeks off at the end of December, so I may do a trip and all of that. So thank you all. We're happy to hang out and chat and talk about anything. But that's it.
Thank you, Puneet. This was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ramya. Thank you for reading the English today.
Thank you,
Puneet.
Thank
Puneet, I had one question.
Sure.
You keep mentioning your guru. Can I ask who your guru is?
Sure. His name is Jim Gilman. He lives in Oakland, so he's very close by. And he studied under Swami Chinmayananda, who is the author, or I guess not the author, but the person who translated the copy of the Gita that we are reading. And he's a like what do I say about him? He has many reasons to be miserable, but in my experience, he's like the most joyful person that I have met in my life. He's 73 years old. He's 95% blind. He lives by himself, um, and he is absolutely blissful, and no complaints about anything. And
Wow.
And because he's also had a very beautiful life. Like he grew up in a fairly wealthy family and realized that wealth is not where it's at. So he had that understanding very early in his life, and he sort of like seeked out what is beyond, right? Like that's the question that we are all trying to answer as well. And he had the great fortune of meeting his teacher when he was 27 years old. So he came into contact with this work very early in his life. So and he's been so he was a musician by profession, and he's been teaching this on and off for the last 40 years. So very good teacher as well. But more importantly, he can that the Zoom stuff is okay, but most of the work happens through like not physical, but more of like presence. So being in the presence of an enlightened being is way more valuable than like any YouTube videos or like these. I mean, these calls and stuff is useful because it helps us gain this understanding, and sometimes you even try kind of get a taste of it ourselves, because when our mind gets really quiet, we can have that experience. But when you're in a group together, there's some sort of like
Energy.
the space gets like charged with life, and especially if there is a person whose mind is very quiet, which is what a person who's realized is. Their minds are very quiet. They sort of radiate this sort of quietness as well. So people who are in their presence, there's this phrase called borrowed glory, where we're borrowing the glory of somebody else and feeling blissful. And what they're doing is they're showing us what that state of mind is while we're talking about these ideas. So it's kind of like you're being told what the idea is, and you're having the experience at the same time. So the understanding becomes an experiential understanding because of the way you experience it. And this sort of tradition has been, which is why it's been sort of this student disciple relationship, because that's how the work is, which is it's more about being in contact with the teacher and building a relationship with the teacher, and that sort of transforms us. And I've had the great fortune of meeting him when I was fairly early too. I met him about 4 years ago, and my life also changed in a lot of positive ways because of that. I spent a lot of time with him. I took almost like 6 months off, and I was with him the whole of those 6 months. And so yeah, so it's been a great journey for me as well. And a lot of like, we have a sort of a community as well here, like, and all of them have been like touched in beautiful ways. And I think in the end, it all is dependent on you. That's the best part about this work, which is how much effort we put in. That's sort of the reward we get. I've been very lucky in the sense of like, my life has presented me a lot of opportunities to be able to put in a lot of effort, because not everybody gets that, right? Like it's hard to find time and all of that. And I've been pretty lucky in that way that he was just 10 minutes away, and I was really seeking it, and I found somebody who knew what they were talking about. So that's like, and sort of that's the reason where I wanted to share this as well with people, which is not everybody even knows that this is possible. Like that's the crazy thing. And me growing up in India and all of that, I find out about this work when I came here. which is crazy to think about it. Everybody needs to be given these, at least presented this possibility when they're like, I would say 18 or 19, because that's when we are all confused about what is this world, right? At least saying that this is a possibility. And and having somebody who knows what they're talking about is also very important, because a lot of people say this and use this to their advantage, and confuse people and like try to extract money and stuff, and that's also a thing. But there's also other people who really know what they're talking about. And
I was guessing you're going to ask for money at the end of the class, Puneet. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. Yeah, but it is wonderful having these classes, Puneet. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for doing it so selflessly and wonderfully.
Well, this, I'm doing this because this gets me high. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. It is my pleasure.
Cool.
And I guess like one thing that came to my mind when we were meditating, shoot, I wanted to say something, but I guess I forgot. Sorry, I forgot. But yeah, thank you for all your questions, Govind, and everybody else.
Thank you. Do ping your thought if you get it.
Okay, definitely. I can share it on the group.
Okay. Sure. Bye-bye. Have a great Sunday.
You too.
Bye, Puneet.
Bye.
Thank you, Puneet, for everything, for being our teacher, and I look forward to the possibility of the upcoming series.
Oh, thank you, Becca. It was great to have you, and as always, I love you and your positivity.
Thanks, Puneet. Love you too. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Puneet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stella. So good to have you in class. You made it through all the sessions.
Me, no, I think I missed one or two and I was late for today's, but I was mostly like, oh my God, I can't believe it's the last class. So even I just came back from, outside and I was still on my earphones.
Oh, you weren't there in the
trying
beginning.
to be there.
Right.
Yeah, I joined pretty late, but I just had to be there since it's the last class. But this was so good, Puneet. Thank you so much. And yeah, Jan, let's look at something else.
Sounds good. It's just that it's like, it's hard to find something that is like short. Like 12 weeks is, I think like the max that people can commit to, I would imagine. So
yeah, and remember the last time for Atma Bodha, I think we extended like way too much, but that was still fun. It was unexpected, extension, but it was still like great.
Yeah,
but this one, that's why I can't believe that this one got over in 12 weeks. I thought it's gonna like be another 3 weeks.
This was 13 weeks in the end.
Oh, but still, like, it's like it seemed pretty short actually than the last time.
Yeah, that's true. Like we can't imagine 2020 is almost over. The crazy year. Hopefully next year is better.
Super crazy. It just like, though it was like the most boring and kind of jobless in between, it just flew past. And no, I think especially during that time, the Atma Bodha time, I think this is what kept me sane. Seriously. Right now, life is pretty much like, getting back on track and stuff. But that time was like, oh my God, what do I do? I'm like feeling so low. I'm just doing nothing. It was that kind of a life. So I think that totally kept me sane. And this was a different journey. But yeah, everything, goes back to the basics of like work and efforts and no expectations and lovely stuff like that. So it was a great thing.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Sanjana. I appreciate you.
Yes, so I will definitely keep in touch with anything that comes into my head or if I'm having any tough times. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Anya.
Puneet. Bye.
Bye.
Puneet,
Hey, Rainier, how are you?
fine and you, man?
Doing well. So,
Thank you very much.
how did you
Yeah.
take all of this this class compared to the other one?
But in this class, today I put more attention because these 2 months I have a lot of stress in my job, no, because the things is very crazy, no, now with this pandemic.
Right.
But in the end, you give me a lot of tools for put more attention for staying the now, no, stay all the time present, no.
Right.
It's beautiful all the time. I listen other people, different thoughts, you know, how interpret the life, you know, how
Right.
make possible to finish this path, no? Try to find the illumination, no? Or only stay clear in peace in mind. No, that's the idea. Sometimes it's very difficult, but we try to do that, no? I appreciate too much all this knowledge you give us, and your passion for make this course. No, I appreciate very much for inside of my soul. No,
Thank you, Rainier. Appreciate you. And you know, when I think when we probably may come to Mexico City at some point next year, maybe we can meet. We can hang out.
yes, sure. I really happy if you write me if you need something or everything. I can help you with a lot with a lot of love. No?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Which part of the Mexico you plan to go?
Well, at some point I need to do my my U.S. visa, so I may come to the consulate in Mexico City. Like I did that like 2 years ago in April. I actually came to Mexico City in April of 2018, and we sort of explored like stuff around there, like Teotihuacan, and we went to Tepoztlan. Like we were only there for about a week or so, or 10 days.
Okay. You will write me. I help you with hotels or tips. All I can do for help you.
Sure, that would be great.
In Mexico we have a lot of things we can check. Beautiful places for meditation too. I know.
Okay, cool.
Yes, definitely. We continue in touch. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Love you.
Good day. Hello. Me too, man. Bye.
Puneet, thank you so much for all your time. Really grateful for you, especially like these classes have been a lifeboat during these like very, very turbulent times. So it's been helpful to join this class and just keep this spiritual like practice like consistent for me.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, it is hard, and we're going through a crazy time, you know, and hopefully, you know, it'll end. I mean, you know, the elections are happening. Maybe some change will happen. I'm hoping there's like winds of change, hopefully blowing, and you know, next year hopefully will be much better. But either ways, you know, this is the whole like, you know, tools that we can use to like say, okay, no matter the external situation, we can, you know, try to at least be good internally, right? Or be happy internally. So thank you for like, you know, I think you're probably one of the few people who stayed or came to the entire all the 12 classes.
I think I needed it.
So thank you for your commitment. It was really wonderful. And
thank you, and thank you for yours.
We're sharing something outside of like, you know, the Berkeley gang together. So that's so
I know. Cool. I think it was had like Morgan not like mentioned this class, I would just like have not known about it at all. So it was just very, very chance and very, very grateful to have known to be like connected this way.
Yeah, really. And once the pandemic is over, we should like hang out. Like, are you still staying with your folks right now?
Yeah, I'm still
So
here.
it's like obviously too crazy for you to kind of hang out right now.
Yeah, but hopefully we can do that maybe next year.
Yeah. Once the dust settles, yes, totally.
Right. Well, thank you again. Have a great rest of your week. I'll keep in touch.
All right. Bye, Sarah.
Thanks, Puneet. Bye.
Hey, Puneet.
Hey,
Hi, Puneet.
Hey. Sorry for the late start today. We overslept. I mean,
Yeah, we're also dog sitting this dog. So there's also that.
What kind of dog?
You want to see him? He's the cutest ever. Oh shit! Wait, how do we do this?
I don't know. Just turn the camera.
Here, like this. Look at him.
Oh, is it his dog?
Yeah. Say hi.
Oh.
Say hi.
What a
So cute.
Dude, he's the cutest. Look at how big he is.
Oh wow, it's huge. Look
He
at
just
that.
like comes on a phone.
What is his name?
And he'll just Jet. He used to be jet black when he was a baby, so they called him Jet, but now he kind of is like, okay, just kidding. Not jet black at all.
What breed is he?
Terrier?
High five, Jet. One more high five. Thanks.
Oh, good.
Damn, he's adorable.
He's so cute, man. Anyway,
Does he
so
shed a-
thank you for class. Wait, let me. Huh?
Does he shed a lot?
Sorry, one second. Let me switch the camera on. It's too distracting. Yeah, what?
So does he shed a lot?
Hey.
No, he actually doesn't
no,
shed
he
at all.
doesn't.
Because
He's pretty
he's
good.
half golden.
Yeah. He's half
Oh
golden.
shit! Like a hypo. What is it called?
Hypoallergenic.
Hypoallergenic. That's the kind of dog I want.
Stop.
Keep wanting.
Yeah,
He's
he's
too
awesome. He's like, just he'll hold out eating his food for like 4 or 5 hours, waiting for us to feed Indian food or something that has like more spice in his food.
Dude,
Ultimately, he'll like give up, and then
he loves like spicy food. If you
he loves spicy food.
He's a Indian dog.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude,
Speaking of an
He's
Indian
he's been running up and down.
Kalu.
not Kalu. Oh God.
What, Jet?
I was thinking of an
Wait,
Indian name which sounds like Jet, like Jaggu or something, or Jaggi.
Jettu. He's actually called Jettu most of the time.
he's called Jettu, Jetvardhan, whatever.
Yeah, Jetvardhan. That's nice.
That's Chetwardhan.
Mostly refer to as Jettu.
Why? What?
Sounds nothing like Jet.
Yeah, no.
That
Okay.
was